Now, would it seem like a mistake that the Jackie Robinson article was deleted if I told you they also deleted the article telling the story of the highest ranking Black Medal of Honor recipient in our country's history? Hey, shout out to all of our subscribers and members here on the channel. My name is Reese Waters, and I'm troubled. By the way, this will be a two-part video, so be on the lookout for part 2, which will drop shortly. Y'all remember exactly how this started.
More fallout over DEI after the Air Force removed training courses with videos of the Tuskegee Airmen, the nation's first Black military pilots who served in the segregated World War II unit, and the women Air Force service pilots, the female World War II pilots, who were vital in ferrying warplanes for the military. The removal comes in response to the Trump administration's crackdown on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. In a statement, the nonprofit created to talk about this and preserve the legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen condemned the move, writing in part, quote, "We call upon the President and the Secretary of Defense to immediately rescind this action and provide clear guidance to all government agencies."
Now, I'll be honest, I almost made this a racist of the week because that is exactly what we're talking about. Pure, unadulterated, uncut racism and sexism for that matter. But I like to have a lot of fun over there in that space. There is one thing that I don't play about, and that is people who have served. You might remember my video about the cuts to the VA.
In recent weeks, thousands of workers at Veterans Affairs medical centers around the country have lost their jobs, and that includes dozens here in West Michigan. It all stems from President Trump's efforts to reduce federal government spending and make agencies like the VA more efficient, effective, and responsive to the American public.
People they have a lot of anxiety. They have a lot of fear. They don't know if they're going to come in today and lose their job tomorrow.
At the Battle Creek VA Medical Center, nearly 10 employees have been let go by the Department of Veteran Affairs in a matter of weeks. Nationally, that number has climbed to 2,400.
I represent all the members, and if we lose one member, that's one member too many that we've lost.
You're lying. I'm a veteran and you don't give a fuck about me. Hey, shut the fuck up. You don't get the fucking union to us. You don't get to take away our rights. You don't get to take our rights. Get off of me. You don't get the union to us.
Now, when I say people who have served, typically that's used to refer to people that have been in the military. And I also mean it that way. But I also mean it in the sense of people that have served all of society by sacrificing their safety, their time, their energy, their resources, sometimes their lives, in order to push society forward, in order to make life better for us here on the ground. And in this case, I'm talking about people who did both.
So, ask yourself, why is acknowledging structural barriers and the patriots who shattered them so threatening? Because it challenges that neat, monolithic, white-centric American myth. And if we stand by why these so-called reviews muzzle the truth about Black and female pioneers in our own military, who else do we lose? What links get quietly deactivated next? What resources will mysteriously vanish from your ability to access them? This isn't about left or right. It's about whether our story is big enough to include all of the people who shaped it. So we need to stand guard, like the Tuskegee Airmen did in those fighter cockpits.
There's been a massive purge of articles about soldiers of color on government websites following President Trump's executive order ending federal diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. They've targeted DEI initiatives in both its rhetoric and through its actions, dismantling federal DEI programs, halting efforts to bolster diversity, more on that later, and inclusion across several agencies. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has declared that DEI is dead. The U.S. Department of Defense removed, then restored a webpage featuring baseball and civil rights pioneer Jackie Robinson, who served in the Army during World War II, and segregation. The previously removed article discussed his service during the war before he broke the modern-day Major League Baseball color barrier for the Brooklyn Dodgers. On January 6, 1944, Robinson boarded an Army bus. The driver ordered Robinson to move to the back of the bus, but Robinson refused. The driver called the military police, who took Robinson into custody. He was subsequently court-martialed, but he was acquitted. Now, due to significant uproar, as I mentioned, they did restore that particular article. The Pentagon said in rare cases it may have deliberately or mistakenly removed some web pages in efforts to remove diversity, equity, and inclusion content after a tribute to Jackie Robinson's Army service was suddenly scrubbed from the DoD's website. A DoD official said that Robinson's webpage, among other comment recently removed from Pentagon websites, was mistakenly removed due to the search terms used to scrub DEI terms from platforms. But here's the thing. Was it a mistake? Was it a mistake, or does it become a mistake because of the uproar? Because when we look at the other deleted articles, that seems to fit with those. Articles about the famed Native American Code Talkers have disappeared from some military websites, with several broken URLs now labeled DEI. And by the way, from 1942 to 1945, the Navajo Code Talkers were instrumental in every major Marine Corps operation in the Pacific theater of World War II. They were critical to securing America's victory at Iwo Jima. Axios identified at least 10 articles mentioning the Code Talkers that had disappeared from the U.S. Army and Department of Defense websites as of Monday. And wait, there's more. A National Guard article on the celebrated 442nd Regimental Combat Team, made up almost entirely of second-generation Japanese Americans, was removed. A U.S. Army page that was deleted but restored this weekend following complaints, albeit without its previous reference to AAPI heritage, identifies the 442nd as the most decorated unit for its size and length of service during the entire history of the U.S. military. And wait, there's more. The National Guard removed 2 of its articles about the 369th Infantry Regiment, a highly decorated segregated unit renowned in the U.S. and France for its heroics in World War I. The unit was initially formed as the first black unit of the New York National Guard. Its enormous victory parade in 1919 was considered a landmark for black pride and civil rights. They were the first American recipients of France's illustrious Croix de Guerre, and many received the Legion of Honor, France's highest honor for civil or military merit. Not to mention the removal of several articles detailing the contribution of indigenous Americans, including profiles of Iraq combat veterans from Arizona, Louisiana, and Nevada, a paratrooper with the 173rd Sky Soldiers, and a Cherokee Brigadier General from Oklahoma. Now, would it seem like a mistake that the Jackie Robinson article was deleted if I told you they also deleted the article telling the story of the highest ranking Black Medal of Honor recipient in our country's history?
The Trump administration just removed the Medal of Honor webpage for Major General Charles Calvin Rogers, the highest ranking African American to receive the award. And it gets even worse. Not only when you go to the website, you'll see a 404 page not found error, but the URL was changed from medal to DEI medal. The same people who told us that taking down Confederate statues erases history are currently deleting Black history.
Not even Arlington Cemetery was immune. Their website also scrubbed. On the Arlington Cemetery's website, internal links that directed users to web pages with information about the notable graves of dozens of Black, Hispanic, and female veterans were missing. The pages contain short biographies about veterans like General Colin Powell, the first Black chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, which is the highest rank in the military after the president. Information on Hector Santa Anna, a World War II bomber pilot and career military leader who's been called a hero of the war, has been taken down as well. Visitors to the site may also have trouble finding information as links to major sections have disappeared. It no longer lists pages for African American history, Hispanic American history, and women's history. Now, as disgusting as that is, my first thought goes to people currently serving in the military and how they must be reacting to this purge. But wait, they don't have an opportunity to react to other people's accomplishments being purged because theirs is actively being purged. Quote, this morning I discovered the U.S. CENTCOM story about my journey reaching 1,000 combat hours, and the F-15E was removed during a recent purge of DEI history, said retired Lieutenant Colonel Jennifer Cannon, a former F-15E Strike Eagle weapons systems officer, in a LinkedIn post on March 8th. Interestingly, my story didn't focus on DEI. It was about dedication, teamwork, and supporting our ground troops. And while in standing opposition to this kind of whitewashing of history demands the Jackie Robinson level of uproar across the board, it certainly does in some specific cases.
So the White House decided that DEI has to go. And anyone who's DEI needs to be wiped off the websites and basically from existence. And so what's particularly striking, what they did was they actually, at the Arlington National Cemetery website, is removed anyone who is black, Hispanic, a woman. They're gone. Now, foreign nationals who are buried here at Arlington National Cemetery, they get a stay. But if you're American and you fought for our country and you're buried here, they don't want you to know about that. So basically, if you're willing to die and you're DEI, it ain't gonna happen. But I want to share with you one particular story of one individual that they're trying to erase, and that is Medgar Evers. Medgar served in the military. He was on the beaches of Normandy. He enlisted, came home, and had to fight for his own rights after he fought for Europe's. He was shot in the back by Byron de la Beckwith with a .30-06 rifle while he was in his driveway. That's a hunting rifle. And the bullet was so powerful that it went through his chest, through the window, through the wall in the house, ricocheted off of the refrigerator, and then landed on a counter. And he tried to crawl to the front door to get to his family to protect them. My family, as my mother worked with Medgar. I've known Mrs. Evers, and especially his daughter Rena, for a number of years. I made a documentary with him. I've stood there in the carport where Mrs. Evers says, she screamed, and the children came out and said, "Daddy, get up. Daddy, get up." And he didn't get up. These are the people they're trying to erase, that they're telling us that they don't matter, even though they served our country. It's deplorable. If you believe in our country, if you believe in our soldiers and our veterans, if you say you stand for the flag, all those things, then this should be why you speak out and say no. You're not going to erase our troops. So what you need to do, you need to call your congressman, email them, and tell them to put their foot down. It doesn't matter what party you're for. If you're for America, if you're for our troops, this is what you need to be doing.
And sadly, there are too many more like Medgar Evers, too many more for us to name and talk about specifically who deserve far better than this nonsense. People like Emily Jasmine Tatum Perez, a West Point graduate who, while serving in Iraq, was killed in action by an IED in September of 2006. She became a second lieutenant, the first black female cadet brigade command sergeant major of West Point, and was a member of the West Point class of 9/11, the class that entered the U.S. Military Academy immediately after the attacks of September 11th. She became the first black female officer in U.S. military history to die in combat and the first female graduate of West Point to die in Iraq. The video documenting why she chose to serve in the Army and in combat has been deleted by the Army under the Trump administration. Now, the justification for this is fascinating to me because what the Donald Trumps and the Pete Hegseths of the world will tell you is that we don't want to focus on people's individual identity, right? We don't want to focus on black history or women's history. It's all American history. It's all U.S. military history, right? They're basically trying to sell you on black history is American history or women's history is American history. The exact same things that we say every February that gets a bunch of racist comments underneath it. Yeah, the thing, what we post that has a bunch of N's underneath it, that's what they're trying to argue right now. But here's the hole in that. See, you could maybe try and skate with that as your excuse. I wouldn't buy it, but it would look a lot better if you reclassify the articles, right? If your Medgar Evers and your Charles Rogers were still on the site, still available for people to read, still available for people to learn through their stories, that would look a lot better. But that's not what you did. No, that's not what you did. You erased it. That's what you did. And that speaks to a whole other kind of motivation. Now, as far as where we go from here,
they have given us their playbook. So let's use their playbook. Follow those instructions. Figure out what it is that you care about in terms of military history and the social history within that military history, and go and grab it. If you care about women in World War II, if you care about black Americans who served in World War I, go find that stuff and save it, download it, whatever it is. If it's on a .mil site, go get it and save it. This is a rescue mission, not one of abandonment. Go get our people, which are our people who made their mark in the past for this country. Let's make sure we're rescuing their memory, that we're not abandoning it. Make sure that we are preserving it so that we can protect it. Go and do that. Catalog it, archive it. The other part is to hold those institutions accountable that claim to stand for that history, that claim to preserve and protect that history too. Organizations like the American Battlefield Trust that say that they are there to represent this past, but in fact, do they just represent the ground, or do they represent the people who served on top of it, or in the air above it, or in the oceans that comprised it? Do they care about, in fact, committing to preserving and protecting that history, or are they just going to fall in line? We need to know, are they an appeaser, they're a collaborator, or are we in this just on our own?
And as far as holding those institutions accountable, I am looking at the GOP that has enabled so much of this. I'm specifically looking at the black Republicans and the black conservatives. I'm curious how you make sense of this. This is the DEI purge, where we just erase the black achievements throughout America's history. Yeah, I'm curious how you are justifying that. And also why I've made a video about this previously. I've seen other people in this space make a lot of content around this, but I haven't seen pressure mounted. I haven't seen pressure applied the way that it should be when it comes to something this patently discriminatory, racist, and sexist.
The media, and it seems like everybody else outside of this community, has finally caught on to Pete Hegseth's systematic purge of American history. Hey, guess what they did? And predictably, they got it wrong. Too late, too shallow, too fixated on the wrong damn thing. On February 26th, the Associated Press laid it out in black and white. It was announced publicly, this digital content refresh. The Department of Defense erasing anything that doesn't serve a white, cisgender, male narrative. under this ridiculous excuse of cutting DEI and whatever latest divisive ideology they've come up with, they're scrubbing your legitimate history in real time. We have talked about this. And how did the media respond? Silence. The first wave of major reporting should have followed right away, should have been tracking it. Did it? No. Historical organizations that claim to protect the past should have raised hell. Other historians should have been on there raising hell. Did they do anything? No. The March 5th deadline came and went. You all were doing your part. But them allowed thousands of pages, images, and historical resources to vanish. Everyone else barely noticed. Why? Because the people responsible for telling them failed. Even the people who claimed to be responsible for the past and the present failed. And when the story finally picked up steam, it wasn't because of the actual purge. There was nothing on the 5th, but because someone noticed an automated deletion caught the term Enola Gay. Gay, ha. 2 days after the deadline, on March 7th, the Associated Press followed up. Nobody else but the AP followed up on their original story. And that's when the second failure happens. Commentators, liberals, turn it into a joke. They dunk on the incompetence of Hegseth and Trump's ideological censors. You don't have to be incompetent to achieve your goal. And that's the very real authoritarianism of the purge itself. But still, too late and missing the goddamn point. Here's what really has been erased. By their own admission, race and ethnicity. If the entire story centers on race or ethnicity, it's gone. The Tuskegee Airmen, the role of black and Latino soldiers, indigenous service members, gone. Gender and trans history. They aren't just targeting trans people. They're erasing gender entirely. Forget that 17.5% of the military is women. Forget that 1 in 5 Navy officers is a woman. Forget about the fact that over 2 million women have served since World War II. Not anymore, according to Pete Hegseth's very narrow history book. Policies that ensure equal opportunity. They aren't just disappearing references to policies. They're setting the groundwork to erase policies themselves. This is how systemic erasure works. If the language no longer exists, if it's no longer accessible, neither does the obligation to act, neither does the policy. People strategy in DEI. The Army's People First initiative, for those of us who served, we know how important this kind of thing is, and I was stoked to actually see that it was put into place a couple of years ago. It was designed to ensure retention and readiness by supporting service members and their families. But Hegseth calls that non-lethal bloat and wants it redirected to warfighters. You know what else is non-lethal? Healthcare, mental health support, education. The things that actually make a military strong, but not in the way these people want. We have heard a lot about observance months. Okay, that the identity months are dead at the Department of Defense. Hegseth said that a long time ago, because we've been at this now for years, it seems. Black History Month, of course, gone. Women's History Month, gone. Asian Pacific Heritage Month, gone. LGBTQ plus Pride Month, gone. Hispanic Heritage Month, gone. Native American Heritage Month, gone. But here is where it gets even more dicey. A specific target, this is a deliberate plan, folks. Firsts in history, anything that sets up anyone that's non-white for being exceptional. If it doesn't celebrate a straight white man, it's out. Sally Ride, the first female astronaut, is specifically noted, deleted. The first Black Medal of Honor recipients disappeared. The entire African-American firsts in Army history page, wiped. And if it's not gone yet, it's going to be. And then there's the wider net of censorship, the dragnet of censorship. 59 search terms being used to flag content include LGBTQ, as you might expect, and related terms like gay, but equal, respect, and somehow even history and historic, automatically suspect. And they're not just erasing people, they're erasing the concept that history itself needs to be accurate and inclusive. And that's just the start. This doesn't stop with the Pentagon. And if you think it does, you are, like it seems that a lot of folks are, not paying attention. The National Endowment for the Humanities has already been gutted. The National Archives is now in the hands of Marco Rubio. The Smithsonian has already shuttered its DEI initiatives and changed its mission to reflect the new regime's priorities. So think about it. The National Museum of African American History and Culture and the National Museum of the American Indian have to start counting their future in days, if not minutes. They're going to be hollowed out. Their funding's going to be slashed. Their future isn't uncertain. We know what's happening. There's not much future for them. And these folks who are in charge are going to run the same playbook on the National Park Service, on the Library of Congress, and any federal institution that supports public memory, public access, or public accountability. And we see the trickle-down effect. Funding that was supposed to flow from the State Department to the World Monuments Fund is now causing the World Monuments Fund to actually halve all of its programming. So for the rest of us, there can be no more debating both sides, no more pretending neutrality isn't complicity. This is a full frontal assault on history itself. And if you're just catching up, welcome to the fight. So ask yourself, who are your allies? Who are your enemies? And who are the collaborators? It's time to name them. It's time to call them out. But more than that, it's time to fight back. So many of you have been out there already doing this, and we need to step up our game, not by lamenting what's gone, but by redoubling our efforts to rescue what is left. And if those people who are now paying attention decide to get on board, we've got a shot at protecting the kind of things that give our past meaning in the first place, which is that it includes us all for it to be authentic and understandable and for us to use as a tool for future resistance.
Now, back to what I said earlier about motivations, because if the idea was that we want to bring everybody under our American flag and not separate people by these identifiers, you would have handled this a completely different way. So what could the motivation be? It actually reveals itself in how they went about the purge. Oh, there's this little dandy out there. Army deleting online content related to women and minorities using keywords like respect and dignity. Yes. Justice, dignity, respect. Those words are now considered red flags by the Army, as it does a wide-ranging scrub of the massive amount of digital content the service has created online over the years, a purge that is leading to the removal of images and videos featuring women and minority soldiers from official platforms. That's right, justice, dignity, and respect. That is what is being scrubbed from our military. And as we know, the private sector always follows suit. And that is why I'm troubled. Hey, if you're watching this, it means we did it. We hit the number. No, not that kind of number. But I do want to thank you for allowing me to get to such a momentous milestone of 400,000 subscribers. It has been your shares, your emails, your comments, just watching and supporting the channel that way that has allowed us to get to this point, and it has been invaluable. And I just hope moving forward that I can rise to the level that warrants such an accolade. But in the meantime, we're going to celebrate. You know, you know how we do.
There's nothing wrong.
And what are you going to say to your fans when they ask you some questions about it?
I'm going to say I feel good.
We have a bunch of new merch that we're going to roll out. You can check out all the new stuff at reesewaters.com, which includes a new logo, by the way, so be on the lookout for that. And speaking of merch, I have some members discounts that will be coming your way. So to all of you members, be on the lookout for that. Or if you would like to join and get that discount, you can find a link in the description box to all of my videos. And you know, every time we reach a milestone, we always got to have a party. You know we got to have a party, so be on the lookout for the members live celebration. I'm going to put a poll out on the community tab as I usually do to see what time works best for you guys, so check that out. In the meantime, I once again want to say thank you. You didn't close the door. You didn't turn off the lights. You decided to come on and go with me and head on over to my place. Love, TKO.